Hello and welcome to Firstpost. You are watching Vantage with me, Alison LaGrange. Will Joe Biden still contest this year's presidential election? The Democrats are in disarray. Biden had hoped the first debate would put him ahead of Trump. Instead, the plan has boomeranged, and how? The U.S. president was struggling and fumbling during the debate. Biden's performance has put his nomination in doubt. Meanwhile, the U.S. is deploying more military assets to West Asia as the threat of a wider war in the region escalates. In India, a roof at the Delhi airport collapsed due to the rain. In Maldives, 2 ministers have lost their jobs for, wait for it, dabbling in black magic. Yes, we are not making this up. People in Iran are voting to pick their next president. And should junk food come with a tobacco-like warning? We'll get you the answers. First, as always, the headlines. Russia warns the U.S. over its reconnaissance drone flights over the Black Sea, says it raises the risk of direct confrontation between Moscow and NATO. This comes days after the Kremlin blamed Washington for a deadly missile strike on Crimea. In India, drama in the lower house of parliament, Lok Sabha adjourned until Monday amid uproar over the opposition's demanding a discussion on the NEET issue. French authorities ban gatherings in the Pacific territory of New Caledonia this weekend and extend a curfew. The move comes as France prepares for high-stakes snap polls starting on Sunday when the first round takes place. It will be followed by a second round on the 7th of July. Mongolians vote in its parliamentary elections. The ruling party is widely expected to win despite public anger over corruption and the state of the economy. The sparsely populated nation of 3.4 million, sandwiched between China and Russia, is voting to elect 126 members of the State Great Chorale. And India to take on South Africa in the final of the Men's T20 World Cup tomorrow. This is the first time India has reached the final of a T20 World Cup since 2014. History also beckons South Africa, as this is their first ever T20 World Cup final.
What we have to do with, look, if...
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. I didn't have sex with a porn star.
It was a debate only in branding. What we saw was a big American embarrassment. Donald Trump strung up a series of lies, while Joe Biden could barely string up sentences. Imagine 1.5 hours of that. Biden and Trump are nearly tied in the polls, so this debate was a very important one. The president started off the debate in a raspy, low voice. The White House later said he had a cold. But Donald Trump had no such issues. He spoke forcefully and loudly. Not always truthfully, though. So tonight, we are bringing you the top highlights from the debate. Biden's biggest challenge was his mental ability. A lot of people said he was unfit for another term. This debate could have put those concerns to rest, but Biden disappointed. He fumbled while answering key questions. Listen in.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare,
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare.
That's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
Trump also had his weak moments. Many of his claims were factually incorrect, but neither Biden nor the moderators fact-checked him. Here's a compilation.
On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few. On January 6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. So that means he can take the life of the baby in the 9th month and even after birth, because some states, Democrat run, take it after birth. Again, we have the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries.
This debate was different from past ones. For starters, neither Biden nor Trump has officially been nominated. They are presumptive nominees. Plus, there was no live audience for the debate. It was just Trump, Biden, and the moderators, quite unlike their last clash. Biden and Trump had debated in 2020 as well. Back then, it was a saga of interruptions. At one point, Biden had even told Trump to shut up. This time, interruptions were few, but that did not raise the quality of the debate. We'll get to the policy part in a bit. Before that, let's talk about the age question. Biden is 81 years old. Donald Trump is 78 years old. Both men were asked about their ability to serve a second term. Instead of answering it, they got personal. Biden and Trump started comparing golf swings.
He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards.
Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. I got my handicap, which when I was vice president.
It's the biggest lie that he's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I had, you know how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Let's
not act like children.
Probably sums up the debate. That exchange was the most engaging bit of banter on Thursday. But it wasn't about the economy or abortion rights. It was about golf swings. Now we come to the policy part of it. A lot of issues were brought up for discussion: the cost of living crisis, border control, the war in Ukraine, the war in Gaza, and of course, abortion rights. Trump attacked Biden's foreign policy. He said the world was now closer to a third world war, but he did tone down his rhetoric on abortion. Many Republicans have called for a nationwide ban on the procedure, but Trump refused to endorse that. Instead, he said it must be left to the states. Biden, though, defended his policy. He accused Trump of endangering abortion rights in the country.
He said the only one who wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak.
Never heard so much malarkey in my whole life.
The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce-back jobs, a bounce-back from the COVID. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country.
We created 15,000 new jobs. We brought out the position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs.
We are very, very close to World War III, and he's driving us there. And Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, all of these, Putin, they don't respect him. They don't fear him. They have nothing going with this gentleman, and he's going to drive us into World War III.
You want a World War III, let him follow and win, and let Putin say, do what you want, NATO.
Biden did occasionally go on the offensive. First was on the issue of Trump's legal cases. The former president is a convicted felon. He's been found guilty on 34 criminal counts. As expected, Biden did play on that during the debate. The second issue was veterans. Biden's son served in the U.S. military. But Trump had once called captured soldiers suckers and losers. Again, Biden played on that to his advantage.
He was standing with his 4-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and suckers. My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser. Think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things, of having sex with a porn star on the night while your wife was pregnant? I mean, what are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
So that was the debate. On form and accountability, Trump clearly won it because Biden was mostly fumbling. He came across as unfit for another term. But on policy, it was a nightmare. Trump made a series of wild and unsubstantiated claims. He also did not spell out his strategies. For example, Trump promised to end the wars in Gaza and Ukraine, but he did not say how he would do it. If you're watching this in America, you must feel disenchanted. You just saw two candidates without charisma, new policies, or initiatives. Whoever wins in November, the future looks bleak for the U.S. Now that you've seen the debate highlights, let's come to the aftermath. Obviously, Biden wasn't at his best, but that isn't the big worry. The fear is that Biden doesn't get better than this. Let's look at him again.
Make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare, and I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
Both of those moments raised alarm bells. They took place early in the debate, and the Democratic Party had a meltdown. Here are some of the reactions. One Democratic lawmaker said it was a disaster. Another simply called it horrific. A third said he wanted to jump off a bridge. Biden's own assessment was different, of course. He stopped by a waffle shop after the debate and said this.
How did you perform tonight? I think we did well.
Biden went to the Waffle House with his wife Jill Biden, and her Twitter or X post didn't imply that she shared his confidence. Jill Biden tweeted, "I hope you heard his heart tonight." So she also knows that Biden's debating skills weren't up to scratch. California's former First Lady said, "Tonight was heartbreaking in many ways. This is a big political moment. There's panic in the Democratic Party. It's going to be a long night." One of Biden's opponents had an interesting point to make. Nikki Haley said, "Mark my words, Biden will not be the Democratic nominee. Republicans, get your guard up." Now, this is a scenario that Democrats have constantly denied. They have all said that they are completely behind Joe Biden. California Governor Gavin Newsom repeated this last night.
Well, how about the substance? Again, I mean...
But it's the performance everyone's talking about, Governor. You have to address the performance.
Would you be willing to take that ticket?
I'm not even... It's not
Everyone's
even,
talking about the performance.
I'll never turn my back on
Are you
President.
ready to take...
But despite that show of loyalty, there were definitely panic in the Democratic camp last night. And amid that panic, the thought must have crossed their minds. What if Biden were to withdraw? Would a different candidate have a better chance at defeating Trump? It would be almost unprecedented, but it is possible. The only other time an incumbent president withdrew his nomination was in 1968. The U.S. president at the time, Lyndon B. Johnson, withdrew from the race. He knew he was unpopular, so he let someone else contest in his stead. Biden could do the same thing, but it wouldn't be easy. Firstly, this would have to be Biden's choice. He cannot be forced to drop out. If Biden doesn't want to withdraw, the Democrats can't make him. But if he does, then other Democrats could stake claim to their party's nomination. Looking at this debate, that might be the best course of action. Not because Biden is guaranteed to lose. After all, there are still 4 months to go for the elections. Biden does have time to turn things around. And there's a second debate in September. where he could make a better showing. But that isn't the issue. What we saw today was an 81-year-old Biden clearly struggling. Even if he wins, what is the guarantee that episodes like this won't become more common, especially at the later stages of his second term? That is something the Democrats should start worrying about. Winning elections isn't the only thing. You also have to govern after you win. The Democrats should panic about that as well. Now let's look at the situation in West Asia. The U.S. is certainly keeping a watch. Yesterday, even as the debate debacle was taking place, the Biden administration issued an alert. The U.S. Embassy in Beirut told American citizens to avoid traveling to Lebanon. They said the security environment remains complex and can change quickly. At the same time, the U.S. is moving its military assets in the eastern Mediterranean Sea. It is positioning ships closer to the Israel and Lebanon, and these moves indicate one thing, that tensions between Israel and Hezbollah are escalating, and a full-blown war could erupt at any time. Here's our report.
On Tuesday, the Pentagon made this statement.
Earlier today, Secretary Austin hosted Israeli Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant here at the Pentagon to discuss efforts to de-escalate tensions along the Israel-Lebanon border.
The Pentagon spokesperson said that the de-escalation of tensions along the Lebanon-Israel border would be discussed. It doesn't look like that discussion went well. This was Israel's defense minister, Yoav Gallant, on Wednesday.
We are committed to defending our people. But let it be known that our war is not with the people of Gaza. Our war is not with the people of Lebanon. Our war is against Hamas, against Hezbollah, and their backers, the Iranian regime.
Gallant put Hezbollah in the same bracket as Hamas. Now, you might think that this was normal. After all, Israel has been trading cross-border fire with Hezbollah since October 7th. Israel has also targeted Hezbollah infrastructure in Lebanon and killed Hezbollah commanders. So it could appear that there was nothing unusual in Gallant's declaration. But then yesterday, this happened. The U.S. Embassy in Beirut issued this security alert. It was a reminder that Americans should avoid traveling to Lebanon, and that the Lebanese government would not be able to protect U.S. citizens in the event of an all-out war. The American alert sent alarm bells ringing and prompted similar alerts from other countries, including India, who put out this advisory today. But perhaps the most telling sign that an escalation is imminent is American troop movement. Washington has brought the USS Wasp closer to the Mediterranean coast. A unit of U.S. Marines is also on alert. They are now poised to carry out military-assisted departures. That means evacuations. The U.S. has evacuated its citizens from Lebanon before, in 2006, when the Israel-Hezbollah war had broken out. The U.S. had evacuated about 15,000 citizens from Lebanon back then, and it is poised to do something similar again. This means that whatever talks U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin had with Israel's Gallant, they didn't end well. And therefore, Israel may be getting ready to invade southern Lebanon. Israel has been wanting to push Hezbollah away from its northern border for months. The daily cross-border fire has led to the evacuation of northern Israeli towns, and therefore thousands of displaced people. Israel wants to move its citizens back to their homes, and for that it needs Hezbollah to stop its attacks. Reports say that Israel is already creating a buffer zone, but if Israel is planning to invade Lebanon, then it seems that the buffer zone isn't coming up fast enough. Israel may succeed if it sends troops to Lebanon, but there will be a high price to pay. Hezbollah isn't like Hamas. It is far larger and better equipped. An Israel-Lebanon war will lead to a lot of bloodshed. The US knows this, and that is why Washington is on high alert.
India's capital has seen some heavy rainfall in the last few days, and along with it, some tragedy. A portion of the roof collapsed at Delhi's airport, specifically at Terminal 1. The collapsing roof smashed into cars parked below. One man was killed in the incident. Around 6 others were injured. First, look at the pictures from early this morning. You can see water leaking from the roof. So clearly, the warning signs were there. And later in the day, the roof gave away. A portion of it collapsed onto the ground. You can see the vehicles crushed under it. It was a completely unnecessary and preventable tragedy. The terminal was later closed for operations. It is expected to reopen after midnight. India's Civil Aviation Minister also visited the site. He announced compensation for the victims.
We want to express our condolence to the life that has been lost in this tragic incident also. And along with that, 4 people have also been injured. The situation is under control. The whole rest of the terminal building has been closed off and everything is being thoroughly inspected so that any other untoward incident does not happen here.
There is a political row over it. The Congress party is putting the blame on the ruling BJP. They have accused Prime Minister Modi's government of making substandard structures. Of course, the BJP has hit back. They say that the structure was built back in 2008 and 2009, a time when the Congress was in power. We are not focusing on the politics tonight. We are focusing on the larger picture. Infrastructure is the key to unlocking a country's potential. Whether it's roads or railways or bridges or airports, good infrastructure has a multiplier effect. It improves your economic growth and output. But bad infrastructure has the opposite effect. Not only does it slow down economic growth, it can be deadly, as today's incident showed. Losing lives to a collapsed roof is not acceptable in a country like India, especially at a priority site like airports. It also sends the wrong message to the world. Today, Indian bonds have been added to JP Morgan's government bond index. It's a big moment for the country. The government uses these bonds to raise money. And what is that money used for? Mainly infrastructure spending and building connectivity. So on the one hand, India is wooing investors. It wants the world to make in India. On the other, you have tragedies like this. And it's not a one-off. Last month, these pictures went viral on social media. They show cracks in the road leading to India's longest sea bridge, the one located in Mumbai. Another airport accident was reported yesterday. The canopy at Jabalpur Airport collapsed. It had been inaugurated just 3 months ago. Now all of this raises the same question. What is the state of India's infrastructure? It's been a top focus for the Narendra Modi government. They have bet on infrastructure to boost growth. India's GDP is around $3.4 trillion. The government wants to hit $5 trillion by 2027. But for that, infrastructure is key. India will have to spend $1.4 trillion on infrastructure to reach that GDP level. It's a very ambitious plan. The focus is on sectors with a multiplier effect, like roads, power, and renewable energy, and the trajectory is good. Now, India's infrastructure spending will be 143 lakh crore between 2024 and 2030. That's double the period from 2017 to 2023. So the government is clearly focusing on it. But with infrastructure, it's not just about the quantity, it's also about the quality. As today's tragedy showed, it's important to build good quality infrastructure. If not, you cannot build investor confidence. The Maldives has just arrested 2 ministers, and you won't believe why. Because the ministers dabbled in black magic. As far as political scandals go, this is a strange one. Apparently, these ministers wanted to get close to President Mohamed Moizu, and to do that, they used black magic. Now, the details are still a bit sketchy, plus President Moizu hasn't released a statement. But it does raise questions about his leadership. This is not the first time his ministers have stirred trouble, which makes you wonder, what's the issue? Is Moizu putting the wrong people in charge? Our next report tells you.
Ministers are sacked for corruption. They're sacked for incompetence. But when was the last time a minister was fired for black magic? Well, the answer is last Sunday. That's when 2 Maldivian ministers were arrested by local police. Their crime? Apparently doing black magic on President Mohamed Muizzu. Let's meet the Houdini pair first. Fatima Shamnaz Ali Salim was a state minister for climate change. Her co-conspirator was her ex-husband Adam Raziz, a minister at the president's office. The cops are tight-lipped about this case. They haven't confirmed or denied the black magic angle, but it wouldn't be a first in the Maldives. In April 2023, a 62-year-old woman was stabbed to death. Her neighbors say she dabbled in black magic. Another incident dates back to 2012. Organizers at a political rally threw roosters at government officials. Actually, scratch that. They threw cursed roosters. So the island does have a streak of weird ceremonies and black magic. It's not clear what these 2 ministers did, but their goal was to reportedly get close to the president, which is strange because they are longtime allies. These ministers worked with Muizzu when he was mayor of Male. So did the relations sour, or is there something bigger at play? Only the investigation can tell us that. Sorcery isn't a crime in the Maldivian Penal Code, but Islamic law frowns upon it. So the arrested ministers could be in a lot of trouble. Again, it wouldn't be a first. Muizzu's ministers have landed in trouble before. Earlier this year, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the Lakshadweep Islands. A few ministers had a meltdown. They abused PM Modi and Lakshadweep on social media. Their actions plunged bilateral relations to a new low. So 3 ministers had to be suspended. Makes you wonder, is Mohamed Muizzu just bad at picking ministers, or does trouble just follow him?
Meanwhile, in China, there is a similar state of chaos within the PLA. Xi Jinping's purge is intensifying. This week, the Communist Party issued a statement. The party expelled 2 senior members, Li Shangfu and Wei Fenghe. In the past, both have served as China's defense ministers. Now, what reason did the party give? Serious violation of party discipline and law. This statement is the Communist Party code for corruption. Both Li and Wei apparently took money and gifts, and in return they facilitated improper benefits. That's the official line of the Communist Party. They don't usually like to get into details, but sacking 2 senior officials and announcing the decision to the public is quite a rare move. It is also an extreme measure. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Xi Jinping is cleaning up the PLA. In recent months, over a dozen officials have been purged. This includes senior generals, as well as executives from China's defense industry. And this purge is not over yet. This month, Xi Jinping paid a visit to a military base. He met with top PLA officials. The Chinese president told them to double down on corruption. I have a few quotes with me. Listen to what Xi Jinping said. The gun barrel must always be grasped by people who are loyal and reliable to the party. There must not be a place in the military for corrupt elements to hide. Xi Jinping is pushing for some changes to the PLA. He thinks there are some deep-seated problems within the Chinese military. The Chinese president had spelled them out: ideology, discipline, ethics, and moral character. All this adds up to one thing: loyalty toward the Communist Party. Since taking power in 2012, Xi Jinping has ordered multiple cleanups. He has purged hundreds of officials in the PLA and repeatedly emphasized on party loyalty. Over a decade later, it seems Xi Jinping is still struggling to fix the PLA. So the cleanup will continue for as long as Xi Jinping wants. But this shake-up raises a serious question mark over the PLA and its preparedness to fight a war. Since 2012, Xi Jinping has purged around 58 generals from the PLA. China last fought a war in 1979 with Vietnam. Beijing is now left with very few military leaders with actual combat experience. What about weapons? Now, there is a question mark over Chinese arsenal as well. Some revelations came out this year. Apparently, China discovered some of its missiles were filled with water and not fuel. Experts blamed this on corruption. A group of them wrote an open letter. It said these flaws would compromise missile operations. Xi Jinping came down hard on the Chinese military. He went after China's rocket force. They look after China's rocket arsenal, including the tactical and nuclear missile. At least 3 generals from this force were purged. Overall, a total of 9 officers were held responsible. More heads have rolled since. Xi Jinping's challenges are compounding. He wanted to build a world-class military by 2050. But most observers agree. A corrupt force will underperform on the battlefield. At best, these purges are a hollowing out of the PLA. Now on to Cambodia. The country now has its own version of WhatsApp. It's called Cool App. The app was launched to rival WhatsApp and Telegram. The app founder says it uses end-to-end encryption, so data and calls will remain secure. But critics fear it could be used for surveillance. Will Cambodia spy on its citizens with this new app? Our next report tells you.
This is Cool App. You can call through it, you can chat on the app, you can make video calls. Chats are said to be end-to-end encrypted. This is Cambodia's first chat social media application. Cool App was developed by many Cambodian IT professionals. The work started in 2021 and it's taken over 3 years. The app will be released now. So, what's the point of this new app? Cambodia wants to rival the likes of WhatsApp. WhatsApp is the world's most popular messaging app. It has over 1 million users in Cambodia. So the country hopes this new app can gain popularity too. Cool App's founder estimates that the app will eventually reach 1 million downloads. But there are concerns about surveillance. Cool App says it's end-to-end encrypted. That means chats and calls are secure. But critics are not too sure about these claims. That's because of Hun Sen. He's Cambodia's strongman leader. Hun Sen ruled Cambodia for 3 decades with an iron fist. Right now, his son Hun Manet is the Prime Minister. But Hun Sen is still crucial for Cambodia. He remains the most powerful leader in the country. Now, Hun Sen has supported this homegrown app. He has lauded the launch of Cool App, which has raised fears that it could be used for surveillance. Internet freedom in Cambodia has degraded under Hun Sen's rule. There have been allegations of censorship, media blackouts, and even harassment. Government critics have been arrested. Websites and outlets have been shut down. Critics say the government could spy on citizens and monitor conversations, even influence political discussions in the country. But Cambodia is not the first country to launch homegrown apps. Several nations have launched their own versions, like China's WeChat, Vietnam's Zalo, South Korea's KakaoTalk, and Russia's Telegram. Cambodia aims to replicate the same sort of success with Cool App, but with citizens waiting to boycott the app, no one knows how successful this venture will be.
It's election day in Iran. 61 million people are eligible to vote. But will all of them turn up at the ballot box? It depends. Iran is holding snap elections after the sudden death of Ebrahim Raisi. Initially, 6 candidates were approved, but now there are only 4. The regime is aiming to tighten its grip on power, but the polls come amid heightened tensions in the region and crippling sanctions. Can this election bring some change to the country, or will it be the same political path for Iran? Our next report tells you.
Until May this year, all was going well for Iran. Its fate sealed, its political path decided. But everything changed on the 19th of May. Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi took a helicopter ride to the border. But he never made it back. His chopper crashed, he died. And so did Iran's succession plan. So the regime needed a replacement. Soon after Raisi's funeral, elections were called. 61 million Iranians are eligible to vote. Voting is currently underway at 58,640 polling stations.
Election day is a great time of joy and excitement for us Iranians, especially during a presidential election, when the people's vote will determine our president for the coming years.
But who will the country choose? Initially, the Guardian Council had approved 6 candidates, 5 conservatives and 1 reformist. Since then, 2 of them have dropped out of the race, which leaves us with 4 candidates. The first is General Mohammad Bakr Ghalibaf, the current Speaker of the Iranian Parliament. He is pro-establishment and he is close to Khamenei. But he has been accused of corruption. The second is Saeed Jalili. He's a former chief nuclear negotiator. Jalili too is close to Khamenei. He also enjoys the support of the establishment. Then there's former Justice Minister Mostafa Pur Mohammadi. These are the 3 conservative candidates on the ballot. Which brings us to the only reformist, Dr. Masoud Pezeshkian. He served in the parliament, he was a former health minister, and he's hoping for a breakthrough. Pezeshkian has promised a lot. He wants to improve relations with the West. He wants to revive nuclear talks. He's even called Iran's morality police immoral.
Just the way we can talk to each other, we can also learn to talk to our neighbors and rest of the world. We cannot fight everyone. We should not fight. We should not show aggression to others.
But will he make a breakthrough in the elections? Right now, the 2 frontrunners are Ghalibaf and Jalili. But if the votes get divided between them, it could be a boost for Pezeshkian. Most polls suggest it could be a 3-way race. The elections come amid regional tensions in West Asia, crippling sanctions, a staggering economy, domestic discontent, plus there's voter apathy, and Iran's hijab laws. At the last poll in 2021, the turnout was just under 49%. Voters opted to just stay away, and the establishment wants to prevent it this time.
The longevity, stability, reputation, and honor of the Islamic Republic depends on the people's participation.
This election is not just about Iran's president, it's also about the country's future. In Iran, the supreme leader is the be-all and end-all. Khamenei is 85 years old. He was looking at a successor. Raisi was that man. After his death, Iran's regime is hoping to establish some normalcy, to show that they still have their grip on power. Will they be able to achieve that with this election? We'll find out soon enough.
Our next story is about SpaceX, the private spacecraft company controlled by technology mogul Elon Musk. It has signed a new contract with NASA worth $843 million to destroy the International Space Station. SpaceX will build a new vehicle which will bring the 430-ton International Space Station out of its long-time orbit of Earth when its operating lifespan ends in a few more years. Here's a report.
2, 1, 0.
SpaceX, the privately held company controlled by tech mogul Elon Musk, has a new task on its hands: the death of the International Space Station. And NASA will pay SpaceX $843 million for this task. The International Space Station is the largest space station ever built. It was launched in 1998, and its crewed operations began in 2000. The station has been home to thousands of scientific experiments. They investigate all manner of phenomena, from the aging process in humans to discovering new types of materials. The station circles the Earth every 90 minutes, but now it needs to be pulled out of the orbit. The space station is structurally sound, but it needs to be disposed of in a few years. If the task is not completed properly, the laboratory can fall back to Earth. And this poses a big risk to populations on the ground. So NASA needs help. According to the agency's Director of Space, selecting a US deorbit vehicle for the International Space Station will help NASA and its international partners ensure a safe and responsible transition in low Earth orbit at the end of station operations. This decision also supports NASA's plans for future commercial destinations and allows for the continued use of space near Earth. Which is why NASA is involving SpaceX. The company will make a vehicle. It will latch onto the 430-ton International Space Station, which is roughly the size of a football field. Then, the vehicle will guide the craft as it plunges out of Earth's orbit. The deorbit vehicle will help the station slam back into the thick planetary atmosphere. Together, they will travel more than 27,000 kilometers per hour. And eventually, the station will be retired. Exactly when the space station will cease operations is not clear, but it's expected to happen in a few years. The US and Russia lead the International Space Station project. Europe, Canada, and Japan play supporting roles. All the partners have agreed to fund the station till 2030. NASA hopes that the space station will be ready for its retirement by then. And with that, it will be the end of an era.
Junk food is the new tobacco. We aren't saying this. One of the world's leading experts is. Professor Carlos Monteiro of the University of Sao Paulo is making headlines everywhere. He says that junk or ultra-processed food should be sold with tobacco-style warnings. Why? Because there is a growing evidence of the risks that it poses. So what risks do such foods carry? Can tobacco-style warnings help reduce junk food consumption? We will discuss this, but first let's talk about the basics. What is ultra-processed food? It refers to food that has undergone multiple industrial processes. Basically, food that has been beaten to a pulp, then covered in flavors and colors. Such food is both ready to eat and tasty, at least usually. This makes it a convenient choice. The obvious examples are burgers, chips, chocolates, and fizzy drinks. But did you know that baked goods, protein bars, and yogurts also fall into this category? Study after study says that ultra-processed food is unhealthy. Its risks have been heavily documented. In fact, ultra-processed food is directly linked to 32 diseases, be it mental, respiratory, cardiovascular, or gastro. Name a disease, and junk food most likely makes it worse. It increases risk of obesity by 66%, of cardiovascular disease by 50%, type 2 diabetes by 12%, mental disorders by 53%, depression by 22%. And it is also linked to asthma and cancer and increases the risk of death by 21%. This is horrifying. Yet the consumption of junk food is on the rise across the world. The UK, the US consume the most ultra-processed food in the world, followed by France and Sweden. India is 13th on the list. For people who are younger or poorer, junk food typically comprises 80% of their diet.
There is an estimate of $1 trillion cost of the obesity epidemic for 2030. There is also an estimate of a 3% loss in gross domestic product. So simply, countries cannot afford, and particularly lower income countries cannot afford to have such an epidemic affecting them.
So this is not an individual's problem. It's a policy issue, which is why Professor Monteiro suggests that it is time for harsh measures. He has called for a ban on sales of junk food to schools and hospitals. He has urged that fresh foods be subsidized and that tobacco-style warnings are given on ultra-processed food packaging. He has drawn parallels between ultra-processed food and tobacco companies. After all, both cause numerous serious illnesses. Both can lead to premature mortality. Both are produced by transnational corporations which make huge profits from selling products that can be addictive, and makers of both lobby against regulation. So the parallels make sense. But can tobacco-style warnings work to curb consumption of ultra-processed food? Have such warnings worked for tobacco? Yes, they have been more than successful. Health warnings on tobacco packaging are one of the most cost-effective ways to curb smoking, especially when they combine text and pictures. They have proven to be incredibly powerful in increasing public awareness of the serious health risks of tobacco. They have proven to motivate users to quit and also to reduce the appeal of tobacco as a whole. Such warnings are so successful, there have been calls to use them elsewhere as well, like on climate-damaging products or on social media. Now, only time will tell if they are employed to curb the consumption of ultra-processed food. With junk food displacing healthy diets globally, it may be time for some harsh measures. And now it's time for Vantage shots, images that tell the story. Drone video shows huge sinkholes swallowing parts of Illinois soccer field. Russian scientists conduct autopsy on 44,000-year-old permafrost wolf carcass. And the Olympic symbol was unveiled on the Arc de Triomphe ahead of the Games in Paris. Finally, taking you back in history, on this day in 1919, the Treaty of Versailles was signed in France. The agreement between Germany and the Allied nations marked the end of World War I. Leaving you on that note, thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.
We've not forgotten our commitment to the Ironclad Alliance to defend our homelands.
My staff will be running the exercise in conjunction.
The year was 1953. A 3-year-long Korean War was at a stalemate. The 38th parallel was stabilized as the border between North Korea and South Korea.
United Kingdom.
Then US President Dwight D. Eisenhower sought an end to the war. After heated negotiations, an armistice was agreed upon. A demilitarized zone between the two Koreas was set up. It stands till today. However, a peace treaty was not signed, which means that North and South Korea are still at war. And recent events between the two nations show that the military escalations are at an all-time high. Border tensions between North and South Korea rose sharply in June. Pyongyang sent over 1,000 balloons across the border. These were filled with excreta, manure, and dirty laundry. But very soon, the bigger guns were brought in. First, Kim Jong-un ordered large-scale missile and rocket drills. The North Korean leader also put his troops on war alert. Then, Pyongyang fired 10 short-range ballistic missiles east of the Korean Peninsula. North Korean troops attempted to cross the border at least 3 times, but were sent back after South Korean troops fired warning shots. And to top it all, Kim Jong-un hosted his dear friend, Russian President Vladimir Putin. Russia and North Korea signed a mutual defense agreement. Both Putin and Kim Jong-un have vowed to defend each other against any aggression. The North Korean leader says that the agreement has elevated bilateral relations into an alliance. The security arrangement entails that Moscow and Pyongyang will extend complete military support to each other if either nation is attacked. After an evening gala and a massive parade in Pyongyang, Putin went to Vietnam, where he aimed his sights at South Korea. The Russian president warned Seoul against sending weapons to Ukraine or facing dire consequences. A signal that Kim Jong-un was delighted to see. However, the pushback against Putin and Kim began immediately. Right after Putin's visit to Pyongyang, the United States made its entry. The US Air Force conducted live-fire drills in the Korean Peninsula. B-1B Lancers and F-15 Strike Eagles dropped precision-guided bombs. Then, the AC-130J Ghost Rider undertook target practice drills. And if that wasn't enough signaling, the US teamed up with South Korea and Japan for a trilateral show of force, and thus began Exercise Freedom Edge.
We've not forgotten our commitment to the Ironclad Alliance to defend our homelands, a commitment born out of the blood and 70 years of working together to ensure a safe and peaceful peninsula. Since then, we've steadfastly maintained a deterrence posture with a credible special operations force to prevent conflict, while also giving senior leaders options and the knowledge that we will prevail if needed.
Washington deployed the USS Theodore Roosevelt and its carrier battle group in the South Korean waters.
And the intent of it is to improve the tactical proficiency of our ships. The intent is to improve the interoperability between our navies. And the intent is to ensure that we are ready to respond to any crisis or contingency.
With the US leading the way, South Korea and Japan carried out multiple drills around North Korea, and a clear message was sent to Kim Jong-un. That an alliance with Putin meant Washington, Seoul and Tokyo would only grow closer.
So Theodore Roosevelt will be the command ship for Freedom Edge. My staff will be running the exercise in conjunction with the ROC Navy and the JMSDF. So we will do ASW exercise, anti-submarine warfare exercises. anti-air exercise, or air defense exercises, and a number of other tactical exercises to build proficiency.
South Korean, Japanese and American fighter jets took to the skies. Air patrol drills were conducted day and night. Troops from the three countries carried out joint operations, and the Pentagon raised red flags on the growing Putin-Kim bonhomie.
The deepening cooperation between Russia and the DPRK is something that should be of concern, especially to anyone that's interested in maintaining peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula, but also supporting the people of Ukraine as they continue to fight against Russian aggression. And so, of course, you're well aware of DPRK providing ammunition and weapons to Russia that's been able to help them perpetuate their illegal and unprovoked war against the Ukrainian people. So it's something that we're going to continue to keep an eye on.
Even South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol issued stern warnings to Pyongyang.
The government will firmly protect South Korea's liberal democracy and the lives of our people against North Korea's provocations and threats. Our military will maintain a resolute state of readiness to ensure that North Korea does not dare to challenge South Korea under any circumstances and will respond overwhelmingly and decisively to any provocations from the North.
Despite the show of force, South Koreans continue to see Kim Jong-un as a threat. And they're increasingly worried about the security pact between Russia and North Korea.
We're still a divided country, and war can happen at any time. Under the circumstances, if North Korea and Russia have closer ties, it would have a negative impact on our country, as Russia can give military cooperation to the north when war occurs.
I'm worried what if war breaks out, as Putin and North Korea are having such close relationship when North Korea recently sent off rubbish balloons and North Korean soldiers crossed into the border often.
For years, the United States and South Korea have had a mutual security pact. American troops are deployed in the Korean Peninsula permanently throughout the year. The justification was always the same: to defend South Korea from Pyongyang's dictators. But North Korea has learnt a trick or two from its southern neighbor. And now Kim Jong-un has his very own military pact, that too with Putin.
From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.